calling out the myths, misinformation, and BS in the wellness industry. This is the Big Mouth Pharmacist Podcast. Here's your host, holistic pharmacist, supplement expert, Big Mouth, Dr. Neal Smoller.
Broadcasting from the most famous small town in America, and not just on microphone this week, but live and in person for a very special podcast presentation. I'm here with Dr. Ray Yip. Dr. Ray Yip is a global health specialist with program development and management experience in nutrition, maternal and child health, immunization, emergency response, infectious disease control, and HIV/AIDS with 25 years of overseas experience, including 20 years in China. And currently, Dr. Yip serves as a special advisor to the Gates Venture on China Partnership Development. And additionally, he provides strategic advice for organizations on business or partnership development in China and supports Chinese health and technology enterprises and people who want to invest in Africa to improve access to medical service. So basically, you've done a lot for the world. You've worked for the CDC. You've been all over the place. You've done very important work, of course. And it looks like, your specialty is connecting the underprivileged with like nutrition and medicine. So is that a good summary of what your experience is?
Yep. You did very well, Neal.
Thanks. The public school reading is doing good for me, So can we speak to one huge misconception before we dive into the COVID vaccine thing?
Sure.
So you worked for the CDC, right? And so that trust has been eroded in institutions. And
that's correct.
A lot of people feel like the CDC is just filled with corrupt people. Can you give us a feel exactly how many people are corrupt and what their names are and where they live?
Well, that was probably the most unfortunate thing happened. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say it's fair to call it corrupt. I think it has to do with the Washington administration, the presidency, which actually does not take the CDC's role seriously and sideline them early in the pandemic. And basically, it's like shooting ourselves on our own foot.
Absolutely.
And CDC has the professional credibility as well as the experience to respond to this kind of public health emergency properly. But they are basically sidelined or asked to be stand down. Yeah, and which is a very, very unfortunate because we're paying dearly for the high number of deaths and hospitalization, and to some extent is a tribute to that.
Absolutely, and I think that besides, so there's the political stuff that's at the top, but really the organization is filled with folks like yourself. Am I incorrect in saying that?
It's true. It's a professional organization. People there are scientists, medical specialists, epidemiologists, laboratory specialists, public health management specialists. They are all professionals. I mean, they're except for the head of CDC is a political appointee.
Right.
Everyone else, all the rank and files, they have to have critical mass of experience and expertise to be working there. And not only for the United States, it's probably, it's fair to say, it's probably globally one of the most capable public health agency. And, all my years working there, we helped quite a bit for WHO to help the World Health Organization to complete their mission because we actually have more expertise and more capability and more funding than the WHO has.
Yeah. And I think it's tough for people to hear because they just see the political stuff. They just see the stuff on the news and they don't understand that it's not everyday people. They're going to their jobs. They've worked their whole lives to get to that point of expertise. They're not going to, they don't have you didn't have an agenda besides helping people, doing your job, I think it's important that people hear that directly from you. So thanks for sharing that. So we're here to have you talk about the COVID vaccine. I guess before we start, what's the weather like for you? What does it feel like? Are you excited? Are you worried? Are you, how do you feel about the vaccine and where we stand with it?
Well, I mean, I think everybody knows. Probably within a week or a little over a week, we will have the first COVID vaccine approved by FDA and to be administered to the people on the high priority list, which it's a really astonishing feat. And of course, because I've been working in this vaccine, development and quality improvement area for the last 10 plus years. So I've been following this very closely. So from all the information, data, evidence that I was seeing this summer, June and July, I was quite optimistic that there's a reasonable chance. At that time, I give a read saying, by end of this year, we have 80% chance we will have a vaccine. It's at least 80% effective. So to my pleasant surprise, looks like we will have a vaccine before end of the year, which is 90% plus effective. So I'm very happy for that. And even though in the beginning, we're not going to have enough dosage for everybody who wants it, but I would think for the next 6 months, we should be able to supply to majority of the Americans who wish to be vaccinated.
Yeah. It's phenomenal. I mean, I have no idea about any of this stuff, but it just the ability to get this done, to have such a high success rate. And so then it's a double-edged sword, right? Because then everybody's watching, and this has never happened before. And we've got a lot of variables at play politically, and a lot of people go, this doesn't feel right to me. And so that's why I wanted to talk to you, because we got to help people, like we have to let people know that this is going to be okay. And so that's the agenda here is we're going to talk realistically about vaccines, how they're made, and like why this one's different. So that way, people can make better decisions, because I don't want it to be based on fear. One of my things that I always say when people come to me and say, should I get a flu shot? And I said, there's only, maybe 3 good reasons, right? 1, you're allergic. Don't get a shot, right? 2, you're deathly afraid of needles. And, I don't want you passing out in my pharmacy. But the third thing is you're an adult and you don't really have to do anything you don't want to do, of course, right? But any of the other reasons, any of the things that are based on fear or misinformation, none of that is legitimate and none of that should stand in your way. So really, it should come down to one of those 3 things, and really only one of them is something that we should be okay with, the allergies. So let's talk about that. So there are people that are just vaccine apprehensive, I guess. So tell me what your read is on that.
Well, there's 2 reasons. I mean, 2 type of folks who are apprehensive about vaccine. One is the people I call the anti-vaccine folks. This has been a growing population in the United States and Europe. In the last 30 years, more and more parents are more reluctant to have their children vaccinated. They believe that the risk of the vaccination does not justify the benefit. So that is one group of folks who basically think vaccine has potential to be dangerous. And that is I will call that the more hardcore type of folks. We're not going to be able to convince them saying, you don't, over the last, half a century, vaccine have saved millions of lives. Probably as a public health good, it has proven to be the most effective thing. If you are apprehensive, fearful, or think this could be dangerous to your child, there's no way I'm going to convince you, about the good of that. The second type is very specific to this COVID-19 pandemic we're facing, because we are right now in the deep. I mean, United States right now it's in an incredibly horrible situation. I mean, as of today, we have 270,000 people died. We have more than 12 million people infected. I mean, our life has changed. I mean, we cannot get together with a family for Thanksgiving, for Christmas. I mean, many people lost their job. The impact on economy, on life, it's huge. It's once in 100-year stuff. So now suddenly people say, we're going to try to resolve or help to alleviate this problem with this vaccine. So when this happens, people will say, wow, magic bullet, silver bullet. And then, as we see in the press and the media, people say, well, in the past, the shortest time a vaccine ever gets developed was 4 years, the mump vaccine. Most other vaccines are developed over 10 years. Today, in early December, this is less than 1 year. This COVID-19 was discovered as an outbreak in China, in Wuhan. And meanwhile, we might have an FDA-approved vaccine a week from today. So people say, well, what gives? How can something that normally takes 4 to 10 years, and now we're doing it in 1 year? We must be rushing it. We must be doing. Also, the most unfortunate thing, President Trump has been, pushing, saying, before election, we'll have a vaccine. So everybody suspects there's going to be major corners cut. He's going to order FDA to approve something that's not ready to be approved, because technically, as head of the state, as commander in chief, he can order people in the government to do things. So there's a lot of skepticism and meanwhile the media. So this is why I don't blame a lot of people feel uncomfortable, apprehensive, have reservation about this new special vaccine that's becoming available. And I'd be happy to address, how, at least from my perspective, how good and how safe this vaccine is.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good summary of the kind of situation. Back to the dichotomy there, we have a number of reasonable folks that are apprehensive just because of the time, the warp speed thought process. And then we have the anti-vax folks. And, that kind of goes to the current situation. We talk about this a bunch on the podcast, but it's the idea that these people are not making rational decisions. These are emotional decisions. These aren't tied to logic and facts and figures. These are tied to feelings. And you can't win an emotional argument with facts and figures, as you said. And so it's going to be difficult to get those folks on board. And that's not really who this is for. This is for everybody else. This is for those folks that want to, just understand what's going on. So as you said, safety is the major concern, right?
Correct.
I've heard a number of different claims. So the first thing we're going to go through a bunch of different things. We're going to talk about actually when vaccines have been harmful to people, just to kind of talk about that a little bit too. But, I guess first question is, if I get a vaccine, will the microchip hurt, or is it something I won't even notice? Sorry.
Oh yeah.
Sorry.
That microchip is not going to go through your needle, so it's going to be stuck in your syringe.
Oh, I gotta get. If I use a filter,
so you don't have to worry about the microchip, because the microchip, we're not able to make microchips so small right now that you can administer through your regular. The little tiny needle that you use for flu shots, which will be the same one you'll be using for the COVID vaccine.
That's right. All right, good. I just wanted to make sure.
So we don't have to worry about the microchip for now.
I just wanted to make sure. Totally stole that joke from a buddy of mine from high school. So thank you, Mark, for that. I appreciate it. But anyway, so safety is the big concern. And, a lot of this, people feel like corners have been cut. So how do we get from a normal 10-year process down to a 1-year process? Do you want to just summarize some of the stuff that changed?
Yep. I think that's probably the most important questions to answer. Mm-hmm. Because when something that on the average takes 5 to 10 years, how do we manage to do it safely and properly, say, in 7 to 8 months? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to answer this in several parts. Number one is we happen to got very lucky with this particular coronavirus, which means this turned out to be a virus. It was not difficult to develop a vaccine against the virus,
Right.
which cannot. We have dozens and dozens of vaccines out there. Some are easier to develop, some are harder to develop. I give you the most extreme example. We've been working on HIV vaccine for the last 30 years. We're not even coming close to it because that virus is changing all the time. It's a real moving target. We just cannot find the part of the virus we can say we can develop some kind of a target against that. So there will be something we tried 30 years, we couldn't get the shoot on the moving target. It just so happened the coronavirus, it's a very stable virus. It does mutate, it does change. But from the beginning, we saw all those pictures on TV screens, on newspaper, of those spikes, those funny looking spikes. Well, from the beginning, everybody who was doing the vaccine development, doesn't matter which technology, which methodology used, everybody was going after that spike, the spike protein. Well, we got lucky. Turned out that spike protein is very stable. And if you can properly develop the vaccine or the antibody against that spike protein, you can disable this particular virus. So the good news number one is this turned out to be one of the easiest vaccine to develop because it has a very stable target on its structure that we can aim for. There's about dozens and dozens of companies using different methodology to develop a vaccine, but they all aim at developing something against the spike protein. So we got lucky on that one. So that's good.
Yeah.
The second thing I want to emphasize, the vaccine development is a very laborious and tedious business. It's a long road. So, and in the past, there's very few times we are in a hurry. We are under some kind of public health, international emergency that we need to develop a vaccine very quickly. So all the vaccine we do, we just take the pharmaceutical company, the vaccine production company, they just take the sweet time. They start off on early phase, develop a concept, deciding which part of vaccine, and the bacteria or the virus we want to attack, and they develop the construct, and they develop the laboratory kind of prototype, and then they do we call the preclinical trial, including the animal stuff, and then they gradually move into the so-called the clinical trial, which has 3 phases, 1, 2, and 3. I will explain that a little bit. But when they do that, they do each part in sequence. Each part of the sequence sometimes takes several months, sometimes takes a couple of years to do, particularly the last phase, the phase 3, the clinical trial, testing the efficacy or the effectiveness of the vaccine. Depends on how common the condition is. It can be anywhere from a few months. In the case of the COVID-19, a couple months may do. But some vaccine, like the HPV vaccine, human papillomavirus, for cervical cancer, that one took like 10 years to accumulate enough cases to do the phase 3. So historically, traditionally, we do things in sequence.
Right.
So you finish one phase, you look at the data, you say, wow, this looks good enough. Let's move on to the next phase. So each phase goes from several months to a year or two. So it kind of string out to be several years. Guess what? This time, it's an emergency.
Right.
We need this yesterday. We need this to save lives. We need this to reopen the economy. So what we are doing right now is we're doing this in parallel. Let me explain what we mean by in parallel. We're not, in the sense we do in parallel, we're not cutting corners. We're doing everything we're supposed to do, but we're doing the laboratory work, the animal work, in the early part of the clinical work, as soon as there's some evidence available, say looks good, we move on to the next phase. But usually there's one of the biggest delay in vaccine development. There's the big part is the research and development part. I call it R&D part.
Right.
That's about, say, under the best scenario, 3-4 years. We are shortened this. But the moment, let's say you finish your 3-4 years development, including finishing your clinical trial, saying, wow, this is 80%, 90% protection against the particular pathogen. When you get that, you send to the FDA for approval. Once FDA approves that of course, FDA will take the sweet time.
Yeah.
So that will take 6 months to a year to review your 5,000-page file, the dossier. Then, once you got your walking paper, FDA say, yes, it's a go. Guess what you start doing? You start building the manufacturing facility for that particular vaccine, because you don't want to build those things. Those are very expensive. Those are tedious. Those are high requirements by the FDA. Those are multi-million dollar, billion-dollar investments. So you don't build those things until you have your walking paper. Well, guess what we did this time? We are building the facility. We are making the vaccine before the FDA approved this COVID-19 vaccine, courtesy of American taxpayers. Now, everybody thinks this Warp Speed. Of course, I'm not going to comment on that name. the Warp Speed so far has invested $12 billion of American tax dollars money. It's not administration's money.
Yeah.
It's your money and my money.
Yeah.
Keep that in mind.
Right.
But what do? We tell all the big vaccine companies saying we are committed to develop the COVID vaccine. The Warp Speed says, ramp up your production facility, start preparing for the production, start making the vaccine before you get your walking paper from FDA.
Right.
That's why they take the hundreds and millions and $billion doing it right now.
Yeah.
That is why 10 days from now, a week from now, when the Pfizer vaccine gets approved, they will immediately have like 10, 20 million dosage for distribution. It's because they've been making them in the last 2-3 months.
Right.
And put them in storage.
Right.
This never happened before.
Ever. Right. And
never.
And it's pretty amazing that they were confident enough in their results early on to spend that money. I know it is our taxpayer money and they would normally burn it.
No.
They weren't confident.
They don't need to be confident.
Because they got it check.
Because the taxpayer, is undertaking the financial risk.
Got it.
If their vaccine turn out to be no good,
oh boy.
nada. Okay? All the money they invest in building up the manufacturing facility, the packaging facility, all the vaccine that are making will go to garbage dump. We pay for it. You pay for it. I pay for it.
It would go where
doesn't pay for it.
It would go where the sorting machines for the post office went, right into the dumpster.
Exactly.
So,
this is actually absolutely the smartest thing we ever invest, using our money throughout this whole pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Our ministry, trust me, I don't say this one lightly. It pains me to say it.
Yeah.
We have done everything wrong.
I know.
In response to this pandemic, from the day one, from February the 6th, we tell Chinese citizens cannot fly into the United States. But then we didn't do diddly squat trying to track all the people non-Chinese flew into the United States. We didn't. Right. We didn't ramp up the testing capacity. We didn't ramp up the contact tracing capacity. We didn't ramp up our PPE capacity. We did everything totally,
wrong.
Fakakta. I mean, it pains me because I am a specialist in disease control, in outbreak control. That is my job. I know what to do. I was trained to do that. When I was at CDC, those are the work we were sent to other countries to help other countries to do. So we did all those wrong. But the only thing we did right is to come up with a program to underwrite the financial risk for the vaccine development and vaccine production so we can jumpstart the process with the understanding any of the vaccine that the government underwrite through the Project Warp Speed, if it didn't work, we absorbed that cost.
Yeah.
But you know what? The good news is that we right now through the Project Warp Speed, we invest in 6 vaccines.
Right.
I'm almost sure all of them is going to be good.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so what I'm hearing from you, before we get into kind of the nuts and bolts there, but like what I'm hearing from you is that we got lucky twice. We got lucky that the spike proteins were so stable and it was easy, and then we got lucky that this is working out, because if not, we would be at square one. We wouldn't be where we are.
If we don't have a vaccine, vaccine right now is a saver. It's the light at the end of the tunnel, even though we're going to have a tough winter next 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
But if right now, if the Pfizer vaccine has failed, if the Moderna vaccines failed, if the AstraZeneca vaccine is proven to be iffy, we have to, the United States, unless the next administration came out with a stronger, more effective leadership, more coordination and management, and support the state to do it. The reason why we fail right now so miserably is because the federal leadership totally was not there. We tell every state, say, you're on your own, do whatever you want.
Right.
Well, majority of the state don't have that capacity, don't have that know-how. That is why we're North Dakota, South Dakota, is in such a miserable shape.
Yeah.
There are a couple of states, the state health department is strong enough, is capable enough, can do a lot. California, New York are, the examples.
Mm-hmm.
But of the 50 states in the union, there's probably half a dozen has that capacity. This is why national federal leadership and the coordination, it's not just the money. It's not just how much Congress can pass the money saying we can give to state for your COVID response. But you have to know how to do it. If you don't know how to do it, the money doesn't do much.
Right.
So anyhow.
No, I mean that it's important for people to hear, because one of the thoughts that I was having is like, what if we weren't lucky? How bad would this get? And I do know that there's new leadership coming, but in America, we don't have that luxury of everybody falling in line. Whether it's healthcare practitioners giving good advice to people, to folks wanting to wear their mask, to governors want to follow directions from the federal government. So I believe that if we weren't getting lucky with this vaccine, and it's almost a shame a little bit that we were able to kind of half-ass it so much, and we're still going to be able to get out of this, because it almost feels like there should be some sort of, there's got to be a reconciliation when this is all done. But all right, so that's besides the point. So we're talking about the safety. So they were able to do this because they ran this thing parallel. So they were able to cut out all the bureaucratic nonsense. They were about to throw every dollar in the globe at this problem. We got super lucky twice in the fact that the vaccine was, the virus was something that was stable, that we can get good attention. And then we bet on the right horses, and all of them seem to be coming in, right? So that's great. So we're able to kind of get rid of a lot of this stuff. I want to talk more about the specifics about like phase 2 and phase 3 in particular. So let's just go over what phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 does, so people can kind of get a little bit more familiar with that.
Okay, so for a typical vaccine development, you have a preclinical phase.
Yep.
Which means it's before you take your proposed vaccine construct to be tested in human. And the preclinical is quite important. And we also, this time, the preclinical was relatively short because for 2 reasons. We noticed there was an outbreak in China literally on January the 1st or December 31st a year ago. Around January the 10th, one institution in China published the entire DNA, the genomic sequence of the coronavirus.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the last 20 years, there's so much improvement technology, medical science, biotechnology, we can use the DNA information to help to design the vaccine. So they can tell based on the sequence which part of the DNA is coding for the target, which the spike protein. So and they made the decision early. We're going to aim for the spike protein. So all that basically for most the several dozen company across the world, they basically was able to get the information they need to design their vaccine. So that again, it's unprecedented. Before, when we do a vaccine development, we don't. In fact, I remember this one other company. The one actually is the one in Germany, is BioNTech. They are the one actually developed the vaccine. The Pfizer become their sort of manufacturing marketing partner.
Right.
They literally designed their vaccine in 24 hours. The two scientists are from Turkey.
Right.
I mean, to me, they are just the hero.
Right.
They actually can look at the DNA, do whatever. So those are what I call the design phase, the preclinical. Once you design that, then you have to decide which platform you're going to use. Of all the vaccine right now under development to be distributed in the world, there are 4 different platforms, and the most basic one is just take in laboratory grow the entire coronavirus, and then kill the virus or inactivate it. So you just inject the inactivated virus.
Right.
That's the one Russia and China is doing. They're the ones already using that. There's none of the 6 in the U.S. The program is that construct. And the second one is that since we want to go after the spike protein, so what we do is we grow a lot of virus in the laboratory. We just harvest the spike protein, or we will make the spike protein called a protein subunit. Then later on we will inject the spike protein. Then you would generate immunity against that.
Right.
So that's the second level. The third one is the one that the Oxford University and AstraZeneca one, plus several other companies, what they do is they took the DNA to make the spike protein, they insert it into a so that we call it innocuous or non-harmful virus, adenovirus, which is like a common cold virus.
Mm-hmm.
They put so they use a virus as a vector to bring that part of DNA into your body.
Interesting.
Then you will make the spike protein yourself. And the most sexy one, the most advanced one, which is a concept, a platform never tried before,
mm-hmm.
is the messenger RNA platform. They literally just make the genetic code for the instruction how to make the COVID spike protein, and they inject that into you. That's the one Pfizer and BioNTech, as well as Moderna.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one. This is again another breakthrough in vaccine technology.
Yeah.
And so each one has its pros and cons.
Right.
If we have time, we can go through that. But let me go through the clinical part.
Yeah.
The clinical part, the phase 1, you just try it with a small number of people to make sure they get an immune response. So then we know the vaccine may work. Also, nobody dropped dead. Sort of like a very limited trial.
Right.
Now, 10, 15 people, those people has to be sitting in the hospital.
Right. So that way they can monitor them just in case there is any problems. And
exactly.
We're looking for the big stuff. Like, does it show any sign? And then does it make anybody like their head pop off? Right. That kind of
thing. Or they grow the horn or the skin turn green or whatever.
Yeah. Right.
So but the phase 1 is one thing important is that in the phase 1, the 20, 30 people, they also want to look at your immune response to say, do you develop antibody against the virus? Right. Do you develop cellular immunity against that? So that's sort of the first part of the human phase is it's more like we call a proof of concept,
Right.
saying, yes, it generates. Then they move to a bigger phase, the second phase. The second phase, for practical purpose, usually it's about, like in the case of COVID, in this case, most of the company use about 50 to 150 people.
Small,
Still small. Some up to 200-300.
Yeah.
But basically, they are looking at any adverse outcomes,
Right.
any bad side effect. It's sort of the limited safety trial.
Right.
And if the second phase shows nobody gets terribly sick, then we say, gee, that's safe enough. And we can move forward to the final phase. The final phase, the phase 3, is a combination of bigger safety trial, but more importantly, we call it efficacy trial, which is to show, does the vaccine works? Does the vaccine actually protects you against the COVID-19 virus? But to do that, you have to do what we call a control group, a placebo group. So for example, the Pfizer vaccine, they enroll, I think, if I remember right, 40,000 people.
Yeah. Half
of them got placebo. Means it's not
Nothing.
a real vaccine.
Yeah.
Half of them got the real McCoy.
Yeah.
Then the way we decide how effective the vaccine is to compare after a few weeks or months, depends on, whether they are in a place the outbreak is common or not. If majority of the people who got infected were in the placebo group, or hardly anybody in the vaccine group, then you demonstrate the effectiveness or the efficacy. And that's exactly what happened to the 2 vaccines right now already submitted to FDA for review, because they found 90% of infected cases were in the placebo group. Only a few cases were in the placebo group. But because it's also a much larger trial, like the 40,000 people, half of them gets the vaccine, so they can also monitor more adverse events.
Right.
And so we call it expanded safety trial.
Right.
So that is highly dependent on another luck you need, but this is not a good luck.
This is bad luck.
If you are lucky, the places you're testing a vaccine, there's a lot of COVID outbreaks.
Yeah.
A lot of people. Then the trial can be done very quickly.
Right.
But if you happen to go to places, for example, globally, actually, China was the first group of, there's 4 companies in China already finished phase 2 in June. None of the U.S. company finished of them in August or September.
Yeah.
So China was 3 months ahead of everybody. But guess what happened? By late March, China has totally contained, controlled the pandemic there. So they cannot test their vaccine to see how good it is, because if nobody can get sick from that.
Yeah, and I think that was really enlightening too, to say like vaccine development takes a long time because it takes time to get these cases. These are kind of rare things typically. The fact that you could roll up to any place in Texas and get like 7 phase 3 trials done in a day.
Exactly.
That's not a good thing, but
if you go to North Dakota right now, you can finish a phase 3 trial in 3 days. So I mean,
yeah.
But so again, that's a matter of, that's also determine the time, how much time we take to get the trial done. So UK and US, Brazil all had a lot of cases. That's part of the reason we now have enough data for several of the leading candidates to be submitting. I mean, as everybody heard, as of this morning or last night, United Kingdom's already approved the messenger RNA vaccine from Pfizer.
Right.
And so they are the first Western country, has sort of properly evaluated, safe and effective moving forward. So the short answer is that I think because we did this in parallel, because there's a lot of cases for us to to do the phase 3 quickly. Those are all the reasons why we were able to crunch this out in an incredible speed.
Right.
But there's no real corners being cut.
Yeah.
People should feel reasonably safe and confident about. At least I would take the vaccine in a heartbeat if it's offered to me right now.
Yeah. And so I want to unpack a couple more things about the phase 1, 2, 3 thing. So the phase 1, that's the, like kind of the pre stuff. So really it's phase 2, phase 3, because a lot of folks, I said, tell me questions you want to ask. So people are like, I heard they skipped phase 2. Right. I heard that they, did this, did that. So phase 2, you're saying has about 150 people. Now, how does coronavirus trials compare to other vaccine trials? Is it about the same? Is it about the same amount of time?
Phase 1 and phase 2 is very standardized.
Yeah.
For most of the vaccine trials, those are all very comparable. Because those are the ones you monitor people closely.
Yeah.
You measure them daily. Phase 2, you don't have to stay in the hospital, but you are called every day. You have a diary. You have to record.
Yeah.
How many times you sneeze, how many times you went to bathroom. And you literally, you are monitored as closely as possible. You have your temperature, your headaches, whatever. And so there's. By the way, there's two gates for a vaccine to be coming up. One is the company itself.
Yeah.
In theory, you can say, well, there is some unscrupulous company. They might cut corners. They might actually, do a sloppy job.
Yeah.
Well, if let's say they skip a phase, their file they send to FDA or whatever the regulatory body is in whichever country, they will not be accepted.
Right.
They will be laughed out the door. They say, where's the phase 2? They say, well, we were too busy. We decided to go to phase 3 directly.
Right.
They said no.
Yeah.
This is a non-starter.
Yeah.
So the regulatory body for, like in the United States, our FDA, they're gatekeepers.
Right.
They have very strict rules and guidance. The one thing people fear was that because of the election, the pressure, they might think that some of their, procedures can be subverted by the White House.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, those are professionals.
Yeah.
Okay. They cannot be ordered by somebody, outside the FDA saying, you have to approve this file, or you have to, they might be pushed to say, you need to expedite, review this in 7 days instead of normally 30 days.
Yeah.
That I can understand.
Yeah.
But in terms of guidelines, procedures, and criteria, that cannot be, nobody can subvert that. That is, something that we have to believe.
Yeah. And I understand where people are coming from, because we've got plenty of examples over time of corrupt organizations and times that they did lie to us or allowed drugs to go to market that shouldn't have. And people definitely, there's enough reason to not trust that stuff. But in this instance, one of the things I say is we have a very capitalistic country. There is nobody. If Pfizer put out a vaccine that could hurt somebody, it would sink Pfizer, right?
Correct.
So, and that's a behemoth that's been around for hundreds of years, right? They've been around forever. So
they would never do that themselves.
Right.
They understand the stake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would go by the money thing, if anything. These companies aren't going to do that. So it actually brings up another good point, because you're talking about this idea of safety. So in a phase 2 trial, it's only a couple hundred people. They're being monitored. And a vaccine, a lot of folks will say, well, that's not enough time to measure safety, because it's a short amount of time, right? It's maybe a month or two. But really with vaccines, and what I like people to hear is that you don't really need to monitor for very long, right? Because it's you're just looking at that moment. And then for a short period after is really it, because it's in and out,
Most of the vaccine, if you're going to get any significant side effect, or we call it adverse event,
yeah,
usually happen within the first 2-3 weeks.
Right.
there are a few exceptions. Well, I do want to make one important remark, which is that there's no perfectly safe vaccine on Earth. Every vaccine that we ever use, whether it be the MMR, the DPT, polio we give to the babies, whether it be the winter flu vaccine, whether it be the HPV vaccine for the adolescents, or the shingle vaccine. Every vaccine, if you look at a large number of people, hundreds and thousands, there's always going to be some adverse events. But it's always the weighing between the risk and benefit. If the benefit, for example, using measles vaccine, say for every million measles shots given, a couple of kids will get very sick. For every 5 million measles shots given, maybe one child could die or severely damaged. So that sounds horrible, right? But for that 5 million measles shots given in any given country, we might have saved 300 deaths from measles.
Mm-hmm.
So you're weighing between 300 deaths and one child gets injured.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the Congress developed this Childhood Vaccine Compensation Act.
Mm-hmm.
In I think in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are injured, we pay you, but we want everybody gets protected.
Right.
And also there are another thing, which is that there could be long-term adverse event, which is so rare you can never measure in the phase 3. Phase 3 is relatively short.
Right.
A couple months.
Yeah.
40, 50,000 people, maybe 60. By the way, 60,000 people that I think Johnson & Johnson is trying to do. It's one of the largest phase 3 we ever done for any vaccine.
And that's important for people to hear. And I think that's what a lot of folks are worried about, is they think that it's smaller and it's shorter. But to me, it seems like it's the same size and bigger.
Oh, much bigger than any other vaccine that we're used. The winter flu vaccine, actually, we never go through phase 3.
Right.
I hate to tell you this,
Right?
Because we don't have time to do it.
Right.
By the time you formulate this coming winter vaccine, you need 6 months time to produce it. There's no time for the phase 3. It's the best guess. Only thing we know, this particular type of vaccine is relatively safe.
Right.
Just because we're just making a different formulation.
Right.
For different type of influenza.
Right.
So that is, can this be happen? Said, let's say we right now give hundreds and millions of people, more than half the United States, and then a few months from now, we start seeing rare occurrence of certain unusual disease happen as a result of the vaccine. There is always a possibility of that.
Yeah.
But again, I want to argue this. You have to weigh against something. What do we weigh against? We are weighing against 2,000 people are dying every day.
Yeah.
We're weighing about something like, close to 280,000 people get infected every day. Mm-hmm. Let's say we use the vaccine, so later on we find out for every 500,000 people, somebody developed this weird disease, their mouths will droop, their eye cannot open up. Well, can you accept 500 cases of people having this facial issue problems, neurological symptom, compared with, but by doing the vaccine, we might have saved extra, say, 150,000 people in the next life in the next 6 months. You can't compare that.
No.
But to the people who get damaged, of course, they'll be very angry.
Yeah.
But that's the truth of every vaccine.
Of anything. One of the things
every drug,
everything, every supplement, every seatbelt, every car you sit in. Yeah. Part of being an adult is accepting that there's a risk in every choice. There's an inherent risk.
Airplane. We think it's very safe, right? We never think, but airplanes do crash, right?
Yeah. Pharmacists make mistakes. Doctors might screw up. There's risks.
All the time.
Yeah. It's a big problem. The computers are smarter than us, So everything has an inherent risk. And there has been times that vaccines have failed us in the past. I don't want to hide that notion. So I'm actually going to share a link in our show notes, and I might even put it on the screen if we can figure that out, for a URL, the CDC, very transparent. These are the times that things have gone wrong, And another thing that I always like to talk about too is coincidental deaths, because statistics is weird. You know, statistics are weird, right? There's a lot of people in this country. And the concept of coincidental deaths is this, that at any given time, 200 people might die from a heart attack, or from, a pregnant woman might lose her child. Maybe there's 50 of those every month or something like that. So if there are 50 every month and a big population of those folks get vaccines, and then directly after the vaccine, that miscarriage or whatever loss happens, we, of course, as humans, we build a story and try to connect the two dots. But it actually is just crap luck. I want to swear, but I can't. But they tell me I can't bleep stuff anymore. I'm going to get explicit lyrics on podcast networks. But anyway, so you just get this crap scenario that people unfortunately are part of, and we want to build that link. And so what we do in those situations is we look at the larger data. We look at the whole pool, because what you haven't mentioned is the phase 4 trial. The phase 4 is the post-marketing research. Yeah. So that's what happens when it hits the real world. So we go from smaller study to larger study to the largest study, which is everybody. Right. Yep. And in the case of COVID, it's going to be quite a few people. We're going to have the biggest freaking post-marketing thing that we've had in a long time, right? Yep. And we're going to get lots of really great data about the actual safety, right? The closest we can get to what a medication or intervention could do is if we did it for every single person, and then we would get pretty close to the truth, right? Because even though there's 7.7 billion people in this country, giving every single person in the world, I'm sorry, yes. Even if we give it to every single person in the world, we would still get a good idea of what could potentially happen, just because things can happen, So I just think it's important for people to understand that there is this concept of coincidental deaths. Again, I'll put a link in there so you can read about that, because it's important to understand.
Yep.
So
that's a very good point.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you bring it up.
Yeah, no problem. I'm well read. Occasionally, I can fake my way through it here. So, the idea of the trial size wasn't large enough, you don't believe is an issue, because in fact it's larger than most studies.
No. It's actually one of the of all the COVID-19 vaccine that's undergoing trial in terms of sample size for phase 3. They are some of the largest trial ever for any vaccines.
Mm-hmm. And the timing, again, I just want to make sure that we're clear. So the length of a phase 3 trial typically isn't years. Like people think like 10, 17 years, the drug development entire path is phase 3. They don't understand that it's broken up. And of course, in phase 3 trials are varying lengths. So like a vaccine phase 3 trial is, we've gone through an appropriate amount of time, right? The normal amount of time. Or do you feel like we've even gone a little bit shorter, but we've been okay with that?
Well, the time for the phase 3 has largely to do with how common the disease condition is.
Right.
We are in the middle of a raging epidemic. Right. There's no shortage of cases.
Right.
But let me give you an example, like the hip vaccine, Haemophilus influenza B, we give to babies. Right. Mm-hmm. And those severe Haemophilus condition, meningitis and pneumonia in babies, for every big cities like New York City, gets about 50, 100 cases a year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, COVID, we get 2,000 cases a day.
Yeah.
So if you do a trial for the hip vaccine, you might have to wait for a couple of years to accumulate enough cases to see how protective it is.
Right.
If we were doing the COVID vaccine trial in New York City in March and April, we only need 2 days.
Right. So it's just that
it has a lot to do with the incidence of the condition you are trying to measure against.
Right. So there was a concept that a pediatrician brought up that I wanted to talk about: antibody-dependent enhancement. So you're familiar with that?
Yeah, I know what it is.
Okay. Do you want to explain kind of what it is?
The best way I understand is that if you end up with a vaccine that creates some immunity, but it's not truly protective against you, but your body assimilates some of the. So when you encounter the virus later, somehow it works against you.
Right.
You develop a more severe manifestation. You develop your immune response can be so out of whack. It can hurt you more than it protects you.
Right.
It's not I wouldn't want to call it a theoretical construct,
Mm-hmm.
but I would say it probably happened to some people. In fact, in the early phase of this epidemic, we think some of the people who end up develop very severe disease and died is not because the virus was so potent or so aggressive in those people, is those people's body developed such a strong reaction. Our own immunity developed this cytokine storm, the immunity kind of overwhelming, and that immunity become non-discriminatory, start harming some parts of vital organs, heart and livers and kidneys. And that's why this steroid drug, dexamethasone now,
Mm-hmm.
shown to be helping to reduce mortality for the severe cases,
Right.
because they reduce and modulate our immune response.
Right.
So, but right now, this for the vaccine we're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
if the vaccine is truly 90+% protective,
Yeah.
I would say this would be a theoretical concern.
That's right.
I wouldn't be too worried about it.
And what I've heard about antibody-dependent enhancement is that that's really what they're looking for in phase 2 and phase 3. Like that's really, that reaction is like the red light, green light for a lot of, because you can see that, you can pick that up. And I think AD did happen in a recent vaccine. I don't know if it was like with an HIV candidate or something like that, but I have heard of that. And I'll add that into the show notes if we can find that reference. But yeah, I think that's the thing that I think people should be aware of, but not have to worry about in this situation. So, because again, the side effects, right? So that's where we're now led to is, okay, so we're confident in the way that this thing's been manufactured. So now, a lot of folks are asking about the actual thing itself, right? So, how do we know what's inside this vaccine? Will they disclose that information? And what kinds of long-term effects could the other things that are in the vaccine cause?
Well, let me put it this way.
Mm-hmm.
This particular vaccine or group of vaccine probably has the most transparent information, data out there before it's approved.
Right.
Any vaccine. Now, most of us all had dozens of vaccines throughout life.
Right.
How many of you ever asked the question, how many people was in phase 3? How long did it last? Come on, give me a break. We never ask. We just stick our arms out and they give, or when you bring a child, they give the shot in the butt. So
it's actually a good point. If I don't mind interrupting you, because I've been giving away shingles shots like they're candy after the commercials tell everybody that how good it is. And the shingles trial has like 1/3 of what went through the COVID trials, So it is like, it's because of the microscope, right? This is under a microscope. We know what's going on.
Yeah. No, because shingles shot is there's no political overtone. I really think the desire of President Trump trying to drive this vaccine out before November the 3rd, and as part of his sort of boosting his sort of ability to win the election, definitely color, both people on both sides.
Totally.
The left and right,
Yeah, he's so excited about a Space Force. He's naming it Warp Speed, and people get nervous about that. And, there's a track record of not doing things great. So, and then you start worrying about the grifting and all the other crazy stuff that's been going on. So I totally get where everybody's at. And that's really what it is. We're all paying attention and we never do. And so it's kind of, what it reminds me of me watching the Super Bowl. I have no idea what's going on. I can pretend like I know what's going on. I can get really invested in it, but I'm really no expert and I normally don't pay attention. So, my anxieties about, Tom Brady should not play into my betting. But anyway, one of the good questions is there was a concern about epigenetics. So, we have these mRNA vaccines. So a lot of folks are talking about I heard that because it's working in the DNA and the RNA, it can become a part of who we are, and then we mutate and we become coronaviruses or something like that.
We will grow spikes and horns.
Might make some people look better, I don't know.
Well, the mRNA vaccine is definitely a brand new construct. There's never before we had done a vaccine by just sending the genetic instructions to make the antigen. Then the body will react to it. And of course, that's contingent on that genetic, the DNA or RNA instruction to incorporate with some of our cells machinery to make that. So that is the deal. And but the truth is, we are actually exposed to virus all the time. If you really talk to the evolutionary geneticists, looking at the entire human genome, you'll be surprised what I can't remember the percentage, but it's could be as much as 25% of a genome. It came from different type of virus.
Oh yeah.
We are not as pure as we think.
No, definitely not. We had a geneticist on the podcast actually talking about this idea, and even how we have 25,000 genes. The bacteria that makes up our microbiome and all of the little buggies that live inside of us has 600,000 genes. So we're actually more bacterial from a genetic standpoint than we are human. And so it is really interesting to hear some of those concerns. I think.
If those people who has any concern of getting a genetic material, DNA messenger RNA material, well, wait until the protein. There's the one is and there's a company in outside in Maryland called Novavax. They are part of this U.S. government project Warp Speed. They make the so-called protein subunit. They basically do purified components of the protein. Then if you want, I'm sure their vaccine will be successful. Probably will be, finish their phase 3 by February and March. So if you're truly worried about becoming part of the coronavirus, you can wait for that.
Okay. And I guess that actually speaks to another question, because somebody said, which companies is going to be the safest, and can we have a choice? And yeah, you do. You don't have to rush out. And in fact, most of the people that are listening to this, I've been telling them, just get this out of your head, man.
Well, most of the people listen to it are not qualified to be on the what do we call it, the top tier people.
Right.
Who will be getting it next week, okay?
Right, yeah.
I mean, unless you are working in the hospital, emergency room, intensive care, ambulance driver, nursing home.
Yeah.
Unless you are one of those people.
Yeah.
We are not on the priority list.
No, I agree with that. In fact, I would even say me as a pharmacist, essential workers, while it's important, I don't think that we need to. The mask benefit and doing what we're supposed to do and the measures seem to be containing it. We know that the spread is happening at home when we're taking our masks off and when we're mixing with people and kind of putting our guard down. So I would say, let's get everybody else taken care of first, of course. But my wife was kind of speculating on the idea of why we have 90% success rate with these mRNAs, and it could be because of that technology. I mean, normally we get a small dose of something and then we're responding to it, where in this situation, that small dose is replicating kind of on a larger scale and allows our immune system to kind of build a little bit of a beefier response. What do you think about that? Is she onto something? Should she switch her careers?
Well, let me put it this way. I will be very happy with vaccine, which is 75 or 80% effective. I don't even think we necessarily need a 95% effective vaccine. Let me tell you why. The whatever the less effective component, the 10, 15, 20%, those people may still be able, let's say, infected by the virus. But they will have partial immunity. It means vaccine is not like all or none phenomenon.
Of course.
So they're partial immunity. If they're partial immunity, there's two benefits. Benefit to myself is that I won't get sick. I may be asymptomatic. I may have a mild condition. Benefit number two is to other people, is that because I have partial immunity, the amount of virus that I can produce and generate and spread is either little or much lower.
Right.
So from a population public health perspective, there's still a lot of benefit of having a less than perfect vaccine. So we can still, because we have to look at this, we have to, as a country, as a world, we have to get majority of the people in good, safe condition in order to bring our back to the normal life.
Right. So
so people shouldn't worry about saying, oh, there's a vaccine that's 96.7%. That one is 91%.
Yeah.
I'm going to go get the 90. Listen, they're all good. They're all good for us. They're all good for the world.
Right.
That is important concept. But of course, that public health concept it's a difficult one for most people to grasp because most people don't think in that term. That's why some of us train as a public health specialist.
Yeah. I think that, what you've helped us do here with the safety stuff and give us a kind of like a glimpse about the trial structure and how it compares. It makes me feel a lot better. I studied this stuff in school, but it was like a freaking semester, right? So like I did, it was like a chapter of a semester. But, this idea, I think, about it being abbreviated or cut short, I think we've done a good job of addressing that. So I think what we can do is now move to rollout type stuff and like logistic stuff, the basics for people, right? Because that's the next question is, okay, is it going to be safe for me? Well, yeah, we are expecting it to be very safe. And of course, weird stuff can and probably will happen, but the risk is very, very small to this huge benefit globally. And we can very quickly pull the plug if anything out of the extreme ordinary would come up. But, we are very confident that that's not going to happen because of how we structure our trials and how we do our statistics and all of that leading to this point. So one of the questions, I guess in the UK, morbidly obese people are up on the list of like high priority. So do you think it's a smart idea for me to beef up a little bit, maybe eat some more cookies so I can get on that top list? Do you think that would be a good strategy for me?
You have to eat a lot of cookies to get into the morbid obesity category.
I mean, I could do it. Don't doubt me, Ray. Don't doubt me.
I think drinking beer is better than eating cookies.
All right, I'm with you. Let's get it together. We're gonna get on that list.
Yeah.
So we had kind of alluded to this, but the idea of non-high risk people. I've been telling people May is when you can kind of expect it, where it's in the community and it's easy to get and you're just walking in and getting a shot. Do you think that that's a little bit late? Do you think earlier in the spring or, am I right?
Listen, to me, March, April, May, they're all good.
Yeah.
I mean, at least I really felt seeing the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
I mean, think about this. I mean, we basically, United States has proven, at least up to this point, we're incapable of responding properly, effectively, adequately to this pandemic. Because it really pains me because
I'm sure
because I live part of the time in Asia, spend time in Taiwan, in China.
Oh, they're killing it.
And I look at what they are doing, and they're not doing anything that's extraordinary.
Right.
People say, well, you have to be a really, dictatorship, autocratic, and you have the strict lockdown. No. They just implement their public health measure properly.
Yeah.
They scale up their testing capacity very quickly. South Korea, Japan, China, even today, we still have all kinds of hiccups and inadequacy with our testing capacity.
Yeah.
It's not the money. It's not the technology. It's the leadership, management, and coordination. So it's that kind of issues. But at least I got a good feeling we are going to do this vaccine part.
Yeah.
The distribution.
Yeah.
Proper.
Yeah.
At least so far I see all the writing on the wall. We are on the right track.
Yeah.
Which I'm quite confident this could be our solution to our problem. We already suffer since March. I say from March to now. How many months? Almost, almost 9 months.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say if we can endure 9 months, don't let the next 3-4 months be the deal breaker.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, a little more patience in doing what you're supposed to do. So you brought up a couple things, and your expertise is in this. So, a lot of folks will point to the idea that China is suppressing information because of the type of government that they have. And that's why it looks so good there. Do you have any insight into that? A lot of us don't really understand, foreign European governments, let alone Asian governments. But, do you feel like that's an issue at all?
Well, because it's an autocratic system, they have it's a dictatorship system that the government has control over the population, which means it's a command and control. So if they have the right playbook in terms of disease control, public health measure, they can implement it without any quickly and
without any anti-maskers at Olive Garden.
Yeah,
right?
There's no. But here I give you the other example. Before I came back to here to the New York State, I was in January. Was in Beijing, so I knew this was coming. I know the lockdown, the measures going to be harsh. I said, I don't think I can. My wife and I, we want to weather that.
Mm-hmm.
So we escaped somewhere in early February. So we went to Taiwan first. Taiwan during the February and March has as many people fly into them from China as United States has.
Mm.
But Taiwan is a real liberal democratic country.
Yeah.
But their government has the credibility. They have the transparency. They respond early. They tell the people. They have news conference. They set up a high level command center for COVID, response. Every afternoon they have news conference briefing the people how many cases we found, from where, and how many cases we are not able to track with it. They tell people what to do, how to do it. The only thing they did was actually start wearing masks quite early. They never have to shut the business down.
Right.
They never have to shut the school down. So far, for the last 200 days, they haven't had a locally transmitted case. Every cases they had are people, Taiwanese flew back into country because they are in Europe and Europe and US. So I would say, in terms of this proper measure, the political system can give you certain advantage, but how you manage it, can the United States come out with a mechanism with credibility and transparency and trustworthiness to majority of the people? I believe yes, we definitely have.
Yeah.
But so far we haven't seen any of that. And in fact, we made it into an issue between the blue and the red, which is very unfortunate. Extremely
unfortunate. Absolutely. And, I think it's kind of hypocritical, of course. I think it's more like that anti-Chinese rhetoric that goes on. We have no room to criticize other countries for suppressing data when I believe our states are doing that. And, because today the New York Times reported the excess deaths, and you've been saying 275 because that's the published COVID death number, but it looks like it's closer to 400,000.
It's definitely more. Yeah.
400,000. It's insane. That's 30% more, and
well, in fact, since you bring up China, let me just give you one interesting number, because I've been keeping a very close, writing a review report on what China done for this so far for this COVID epidemic.
Mm-hmm.
They delayed the local official in Wuhan trying to underplay the severity and the gravity of the outbreak that was discovered December 31st probably resulted in about a 10 days delay in their national response, 10 to 12 days. But once the central government, the Beijing government, discovered this delay, they start responding forcefully. In fact, by then, they start responding, things were getting out of hand.
Yeah.
There, just like in the Lombardy area in Italy or New York City in April. But they managed to put that fire down. So they delayed it by, okay, let's say 2 weeks. You know how much we delayed in the United States?
9 months.
we knew.
Yeah.
China actually told the U.S. CDC the first half of January, we have this problem. We have this cases. We have this outbreak. We have the DNA sequence, We didn't respond until the second half of March. So from mid-January to second half of March, we delayed it by 2 months. If we now with our capability with CDC, if we let CDC to do their job, provide guidance and recommendation to the states, mobilizing the testing capacity, all that. If we had that 2 months, we would not be anywhere as deep we are today.
Yeah.
So meanwhile, we blame everything for China for hiding information, for lack of transparency. Yes, they did. They delayed it by 12 days, but we delayed it by 60 days.
Yeah. Agreed. I'm with you. I got nothing but bad stuff to say about our response too. So I'm with you on that whole thing. So around this, it seems like this is going to be a 2-dose situation. Do you understand? Do you know, like, is it like a 2-month delay? Is it a 3-month delay? Do you know anything about that? Like the vaccine when we get this?
What the
logistics, like, when people come to get the shot, I believe they have to get 2 doses. So not only do we need, basically 300 million, we need 600 million doses in this country if everybody were to get it. So
correct. Originally, the one that's been developed by Johnson & Johnson, they were hoping they can do just a single dose.
Nice.
But right now, it looks like they are having second thought. They are expanding their clinical trial, including as part of it with the second dose.
Yeah.
Normally, the second dose should be received about 3 weeks after the first dose.
Yeah, 3 weeks.
So when it's allocated, they should be allocated for each person. The second dose should be reserved. There should not. Hopefully, there'll be no issues.
Shortages. Yeah, exactly.
Whether you got your first dose and couldn't get your second dose.
Yeah,
I mean, the second dose should have your name on there somewhere in the in the supply chain.
Yeah. One of the things that came up, I registered today to be a vaccine provider with the CDC in New York State, and they were talking about storage. And that's a big question mark for everybody because ultra cold is the word that they're using, but it's basically, negative 60 or more, and dry ice. So what do you think what do you think about that, I guess? And, how long will that last? And do you think that's a disadvantage for that? Do you think that vaccine will become mass market,
Well, that can only, I think, even in your setting, the one with the highest cold chain requirement is the one to be released by Pfizer. They have to be transported to the point of service at a minus 70 centigrade condition, which is, so they have a special cold storage device with dry ice. Once they get to the final site, the way I understood based on the report is that they can be put in refrigerator, can be good for 5 days.
Right.
So let's say if you can line up enough people for the dosage you have for the next 5 days, then I don't think that's a serious issue.
I don't think so either.
So I think, but this is a very expensive and difficult transport mechanism they have. So which means it will work in Western Europe and United States.
Yes.
But worldwide,
right,
to send a special cold storage device with dry ice for Africa, for Middle Eastern country, for South America would be impractical.
Yeah.
But the good news is that the other vaccines that's under development, for example, the ones Russia and China already developed, the whole virus inactivated vaccine, they can literally be stable in room temperature for 1 month.
Oh, there you go. That's great. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, they're supposed to be stored in refrigerator in 4 degree.
Yeah.
But their temperature tolerance is up to 25 degree.
Wow.
So it's going to be a mix and match game.
Yeah.
Some countries are more suitable for certain type of vaccine. And then, of course, companies like Moderna and Pfizer, they probably are developing a new generation of their mRNA vaccine with a different formulation that can be more temperature stable or something.
Right.
I'm almost sure they'd be doing that. They'd be stupid if they're not.
They'd be stupid not to. Absolutely. Yeah. They're right on the next train out of town here. So, how long do you think protection is going to last? Right now, we've got good reports that your immunity to the current strain is at least 6 months because that's how long we've been tracking. What do you think?
Well, if we look at historically all the vaccines ever developed that's been given, whether it be flu vaccine, whether it be childhood vaccine, whether it be shingle vaccine, HPV vaccine, hepatitis vaccine, tetanus vaccine, most of them are good for a few years. So even though we don't have the data, if I have to speculate, I would say 2-3 years should be pretty safe.
Right.
To be my guess.
Mm-hmm.
But let's put it this way. Because we are under a global pandemic emergency situation, if we can actually roll out the vaccine to 70% of the people worldwide within 1 year, that basically will reach what we call the herd immunity threshold, such it will stop the transmission of this coronavirus. So we might have small focus of outbreaks in the future, then we just vaccinate only those people.
Right.
But we don't necessarily need to re-immunize everybody, every country, every couple of years. I'm sure pharmaceutical company will be happy to see that happen.
Especially since we paid for it.
but the thing is that our first dose, the next year, when we get our COVID vaccine, you and I don't have to pay because we already paid, because those are our tax dollars.
Mm-hmm.
So it will be free. But say if this thing kind of start working into 2022, 23, it's kind of smoldering. We still have to get more shots. I can assure you, by that time, Operation Warp Speed payments long gone, and it will be cash on the barrel. Okay.
Yeah. So, kids, I guess that's one of the last questions that I have is, this wasn't studied in children. We have, the ages are kind of moving down the pike. But what are your thoughts on kids? Would you immunize your children with this?
Well, I think they just need to do the limited clinical trial at the minimum to demonstrate the safety.
Mm-hmm.
And then, because there's some wisdom about considering putting kids as the priority, because we learned a lot from our the annual influenza flu, is that kids actually is the one they are the transmitter.
Yeah, little petri dishes
of the flu. Mm-hmm. They're the one bring home for the parents, to the grandparents. So if you look at who are the most likely to get sick or become sicker, the older people, of course. But who are the ones likely to generate community transmission? Could be the kids. So we should really take the vaccination for the children more seriously.
Yeah.
Than we have right now.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Let me see. I got one more, I think. Well, I guess, paint a picture for me. If we have these vaccine hesitant folks that decide that they're just not going to get this early or later, they're just, this isn't for me. What does life look like if we have a 30% immunization rate?
No way. Listen, the only people don't want it and don't want to get it would be the hardcore anti-vaxxers.
Yeah.
And they don't make up more than 10-15%.
So you're saying that the holdouts are going to come around.
Well, in fact, I will tell you, here's my prediction, or you can say speculation. because in the beginning, there's such a scarcity of this vaccine. We only allocate to people with such a high priority. So there's going to be a lot of people really want it but couldn't get it. So that's going to generate a psychological demand and want.
So it's like an Xbox.
And exactly. So in fact, that's going to influence people thinking. The more you couldn't have it, the more you think it's good.
Right.
The more you want it.
Right.
Because we're not going to be able to satisfy the demand right away until maybe April and May. So before that, you're going to see people are going to find all kinds of ways to get themselves immunized or qualified. And then some people are going to brag about it, say, oh, I got immunized, I got a doctor to write me a certificate, say I have chronic disease condition, then I can. So then it's going to create this psychological demand. So I actually think that's going to be more likely to be the scenario. And so everybody say, I don't want to be the first people to get it. I want to see whether any of you, develop this, corona looking like horn on your head before I'm going to do it, So that's my prediction. We should see.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's going to be viral in nature. People are going to, I heard.
Listen, if your pharmacists are able to offer the vaccine, trust me, you're going to have a line outside your door.
No, I know it.
Longer than you know what to do.
I told the county, I told the state, I'm a maniac. I can immunize one person a minute with 2 helpers. So I will immunize for 14 hours a day until I get this done. And I know that there will be a line out the door for sure. And all of these people that are holdouts, the best analogy I heard is that folks are like, I don't go to new restaurants when they first open up. I let other people do it. And I can understand that. But I don't really think it's going to be a difference between beginning of the year, end of the year for most folks. It'll just be like a month or two. I'm with you on that. So yeah, I guess your advice for everybody is get the vaccine. And do you have any other advice for people here? Anything, any hope we can give us here? I know we've been trashing America.
I think we should just be patient. I do think this is sort of the bad thing. So far happened. The vaccine come out better and faster than most people expected, and I feel very good about my own prediction because I've been keeping a very close tab on this on a day-to-day basis. So, and my prediction in the middle of the summer was 80% chance that we had this a workable vaccine, which is at least 80% good. So, and look, and also all the data they do publish, some of them are particularly the preclinical data, the animal data, the immunogenicity data, they really look good. That's why I was so confident.
Yeah,
this will work.
Great.
And another thing is that, for example, China, even though they never completed phase 3, they already gave the emergency authorization for the 4 vaccines, and one company already immunized vaccinated more than 1 million people.
Wow.
So at least those 1 million people so far, nobody had any issues.
Yeah, no double heads.
So they are blazing the trail for us.
Right.
So that's also an indication it's probably not a very nasty vaccine at all.
That's great. So one last thing that I've been telling folks is that they're going to be wearing masks for pretty much all of 2021. Do you think that's unrealistic? Do you think we'll take the masks off before the end of the year, before Thanksgiving next year?
Well, here's the question: once you are vaccinated, and if you are protected, it also means you are unlikely to be a carrier or spreader of the coronavirus. Then you probably be safe to do not wearing a mask.
Mm-hmm.
But then the question is who are the ones? The issue, as you know, so I'm vaccinated, I'm fine. But some people say they're not vaccinated, but they don't wear a mask.
Right.
But then they create the additional risk to other people.
Right.
So how do we manage that as a public health measure? Do we give a sticker to everybody vaccinated, like I vote, and like say I vaccinated?
Yeah.
Of course I can buy you a vaccinated sticker myself and go to a restaurant not wearing a mask. So anyway, so those are the detail hasn't sorted out yet.
Yeah.
But if we can, by next summer, 6 months from now, if we can get 65% of the people in the United States vaccinated, I would think we probably will be able to resume a normal life with or without masks. That would be my prediction.
Excellent. Dr. Yip, I appreciate you coming on and doing this. We try to take a peek behind the curtain and address myths and misinformation. That's pretty much what my show is. So I think you've done a really great job doing that for folks, and you really helped me out with this. So I appreciate you and the work you've done in the past and what you continue to do. And thank you for coming on. And hopefully you made a lot of people feel better about this whole thing. I definitely feel better about it. So thanks for coming.
Sure. It's my pleasure, Neal. Anytime.